I texted the group chat yesterday as we were kind of getting ready for the show, and I said Aaron Wilson just went on a tweeting rampage because that's what he did. He tweeted out like 15 things.
Got all that agent insider info.
And he just news dumped on a Sunday. But the one that stuck out the most to fans was that Jonathan Greenard, while an extension there's both parties are interested in said extension and Greenard staying in Houston, it sure as hell sounds like he's gone. I am ready to close the door on hopes that Jonathan Greenard will be a Houston Texan going forward.
Are you some type of way about it?
I do feel some type of way about it.
What is that some type of way that you feel about it?
I just feel like it's over.
Okay. I was wondering if you were upset about it, disappointed.
I guess I'm not surprised. It always felt like this was inevitable, that he was not going to be a Houston Texan, that as he hit the market, that I did not think Jonathan Greenard was a $20 million player.
I don't either.
As good as last season was, if that's what his market is when he hits free agency,
bye.
See you later, dude. It just now it feels final that that's going to happen.
So I wonder if he's getting offers that are perhaps less than what he was looking for, and if there is a chance that he comes not necessarily back hat in hand, but if he thinks to himself, pretty good situation here. But that's sort of the vibe I got going into this thing. And to Jonathan Greenard, I would tell him, get your money, dude. Mm-hmm. Get your money. You will not have a better opportunity to make money than you do right now, where you are a young man coming off of a 12.5 sack season.
I think that when you look at Jonathan Greenard and what he's going to see in free agency, he might be a little disappointed, though. That based on the names that are out there now, free agency has been an interesting start, and we'll have some like news and notes throughout the show today on what's been happening. Mike Evans, obviously the big name that's no longer on the market. If he does, get underwhelmed by the offers that he sees in free agency, at the same time, well, I think it makes sense that he could come back here on a lesser deal. Don't you believe that oftentimes these guys still sign elsewhere? Look at Dalton Schultz. He thought he was going to get a long-term deal with the Cowboys. They never came to terms with that. And instead of taking a $6 million deal to stay in Dallas, he took a $6 million one-year deal here.
I think that the Cowboys thought they were going to get Dalton Kincaid in the draft, though. And I think in the case of Dalton Schultz, he signed a one-year deal.
It's true. Greenard's not going to do that.
Greenard has at the very least earned some sort of deal that a team can get out of after 2 years. I would think 3 to 4. Semantics at that point. I'm curious as to how they find a way to replace him. I would argue, just based off of 20 years, a master's course in building a dynasty by growing up and watching the Patriots, you generally would like 2 players who are good over 1 player who is great, but not to the point where you're thinking to yourself, this guy's like an all-pro or anything like that. And I think that's where Greenard is. We're in the, is he great? I don't know about that.
He's good.
Yeah.
He's very good.
And he's going to get paid like he's great. Do you want to do that? You shouldn't do that.
No, you shouldn't. And the names are already out there. Right around the time when we got this Jonathan Greenard report, Jeremy Fowler reported that Christian Wilkins was not going to get franchise tagged by the Miami Dolphins. Different position. He was going to play on the interior. Last year, he had 9 sacks. He's never had more than 4.5 besides last year. And Spotrac is projecting him to get a $20 million a year contract.
That seems insane to me.
And that's,
because I'll be honest, like before the show, I asked Joe. Joe said Christian Wilkins, and I said, who the hell is that? And then I looked up and I saw, okay, he's got 9 sacks, but I mean, what division is he playing in? Oh, he's in the AFC East, where you've got just bozo quarterback after bozo quarterback. Like, great, you get to go up against Zach Wilson and Mac Jones a bunch of times a season. Bailey Zappi as well, who's like my height. And then on top of that, I forget what division the AFC East played out of conference, but I feel like there were some other dud quarterbacks on the schedule for the Dolphins defense, which had a pretty underwhelming year given that they just fired their defensive coordinator. So, hey, it's an option. He's young at the defensive tackle position. And I'm not going to say whether or not I think it's going to work out, because as I said before, like I had no idea who the hell that guy was. But $20 to $30 million a year for a guy who I don't know who the hell he is?
See, that should be that's your first red flag.
I feel like, look,
if you're a $20 million player, we should absolutely know who you are.
Yeah, that's what I think. That's what I think. And I mean, again, maybe I'm not the best judge when it comes to this, because there's tons of musicians that I've never heard of before that are clearly very popular. And maybe Christian Wilkins is thought of as legitimately one of the best defensive tackles in the NFL. But off the top of my head, I do not think that guy is one of the top defensive tackles in the NFL.
Look, you've got a guy here who has 100 tackles combined in 2022, 90, 2021. So he's not just a sack machine. He really hasn't been until this year. But it feels very Greenard-like to me, where you're going to potentially pay a guy at his peak value as he hits free agency. And if you're going to do that, then you might as well just keep Jonathan Greenard. Like, that's where I'm at with the idea of bringing in someone of that caliber of a contract.
Now, I disagree there because it's different positions.
Yeah.
We're talking edge rusher versus interior guy.
And having a guy like Christian Wilkins next to Will Anderson would be terrifying for most offensive coordinators.
You don't have a game changer on the interior. You have good players. If Sheldon Rankins is back, okay, that's solid. If you have Malik Collins healthy for a full season, okay, that's solid. But you don't have a difference maker on the defensive tackle side of things. You do need that. I just don't know that Christian Wilkins is. I would say that Justin Matabuke, who very similar to Greenard, to Wilkins, is coming off of a career year where he had 13 sacks as a defensive tackle. Like, oh my God, geez, I would now that to me, okay, 20 to 30, sure. 20, 30 million a year? Sure, absolutely. But yeah, Wilkins, I don't know about that.
Yeah, I'm out on Wilkins. To me, I'd rather go with the edge guy and bring back Rankins, keep Collins, obviously, and you're in a much better spot. Now, the other name that came up from Aaron Wilson when discussing Jonathan Greenard and potential replacements, Aaron Wilson reported that one name he heard at the Combine was Chase Young. Now, Chase Young, big name.
His big name.
But he's a bust. And
you're calling him a bust.
He's a bust.
He's a bust?
Chase Young is absolutely.
I think he's been disappointing. Well, no, this is a word you're going to find out with me.
I was like,
you're going to find out with me that this
semantics
word, like, you can only call someone a bust if he's like doesn't even try and he's just an absolute loser of a teammate. That is where I feel like you're a bust. I think Chase has been very underwhelming, but I feel like there are some similarities between Jadeveon Clowney and Chase Young.
Oh, that I don't like that.
Why?
Which similarities?
I would say that they are guys who have had unfortunate luck on the injury side of things.
That's fair.
And they have not produced to the level that people expected them coming out of the draft. But have they been bad players? Now, I think with Clowney was always good. Clowney was never great, but Clowney was always good. And I will take a good player with the first overall draft pick every single day. I don't think it's the end of the world to have someone who's good there. Hey, if he played for you, good. If he's not playing for you at all, bad. Young did not play often for the Commanders. I think that there have been moments, of course, with the San Francisco 49ers where you're like, wait, wasn't this Chase Young?
Yeah, there was some weird reports about him potentially getting benched in the playoffs because of effort, but that also seemed not real at the same time.
I hesitate to call him a bust. Sean, you look like you want to jump in on this.
I'm just going to say he got drafted in 2020. He's about to be on his third team.
That's a good point.
It's not a good sign.
Third time the charm.
I mean, Chase Young, for his rookie of the year, 15 games, 7.5 sacks. Year 2, 9 games, 1.5 sacks. Year 3, he only played in 3 games. A bunch of injuries, like you said. And this last year, he played in 16 games. He had 7.5 sacks again.
7.5 sacks twice in an NFL career is pretty damn good.
And it is. And,
so I can't call him a bust.
And that to me is where, but the difference between him and Greenard is just based on draft position, to where he feels busty to me.
Man, I think you got to just be an absolute disaster of a player. No, busty is Sydney Sweeney on Saturday Night Live. We're talking busty.
Fact.
You have to just suck as a teammate and do not belong in the NFL at all. And look, the effort stuff that you just brought up, definitely a red flag. The injuries, also a red flag. Personally, I'd like to stay away from Chase Young altogether as I continue to be choosy and picky with what I want.
Fun fact, all that being said, I would take Chase Young.
You would?
Because I think he's going to get half the contract. I know.
So you're going to pay him pennies on the dollar.
I think he is worth the kind of contract to take a risk on him.
Okay. Well, how would your negotiation go? You want to role play here?
Sure.
Like a little improv?
Am I Chase or am I Nick?
I'm going to be Chase Young.
Okay.
I'm the Chase Young, Joe.
Chase, you have had a lot of issues with staying healthy.
Well, it ain't my fault. That's God's fault.
Fair. But how do you expect us to believe that you're going to be healthy going forward?
Because the God's on my side now.
Why?
Look at God brought me to this meeting with you. I don't know why he's a God-fearing man.
I don't know either.
Look, we're just riffing. We're improving.
I feel like when you put God into the equation, it puts me into a corner here about what I'm going to counter with.
I need my money.
I would be like, well, that would have worked on the last guy. Jack Easterby doesn't work here anymore,
you're right.
right?
You're right. I'm not Jack Easterby. I'm not a pastor running this organization anymore. I don't care.
I'm godless Nick Casario.
Yes, I'm a robot. I am a robot from outer space sent here to win games for the Houston Texans.
Okay, all right. Well, listen, Chase Young now.
Thank you, Sean.
Chase Young speaks in the third person, and Chase Young wants you to think about this. Chase Young played at Alabama, right? So Chase Young playing at Alabama.
Ohio State.
Well, Chase Young played at Ohio State, right? So I
Have you
don't
heard of
remember where I
him
played.
either?
You know what? Hey, listen. Chase Young he's been dealing with a lot of injuries, a lot of CTE. You know, Chase Young is ready here. Okay? And Chase Young knows that, like, you guys had a guy in Jadeveon Clowney. I'm a lot like Jadeveon Clowney, but, like, I've got more upside than Jadeveon Clowney, you know? Because I'm younger and because I'm going to try harder. You remember when Bill O'Brien was talking about Jadeveon Clowney and saying he's not a worker bee? Well, Chase Young, worker bee. Chase Young is a worker bee, and that's why you give the worker bee all of the money.
Chase Young, would you play for $10 million a year?
I mean, I'll be like 12 and a half.
Deal.
All right.
Chase Young, you are a Houston Texan.
He doesn't even remember where he plays. You know what? I always forget that Chase Young is Ohio State and not Alabama. I always confuse those with that guy. I don't know.
They're both red jerseys.
Not really exactly helping my football credibility out this first segment. Like, who's Christian Wilkins? Ohio State, Alabama, same school.
Chase Young, he's not going to be a $20 million football player. And what you said earlier in the segment, 2 players for the price of 1. Could you get Chase Young and bring back Rankins? And you're set at the defensive line, and maybe you still go into the draft and you bring someone else in too?
I don't know you're set in free agency, but to what you say, hey, if you bring somebody into the draft, yes. Those are 2, I think, good depth pieces. But I do want to figure out what it was with Chase Young that, for whatever reason, in San Francisco, after leaving the Commanders, wasn't working out. Because you would think you leave a loser organization like the Commanders and you play for winners like San Francisco. You would think that would light the spark. And I don't know, maybe he's still working back from injuries or something like that, but he was not the difference maker that people thought he would be for the 49ers.
Yeah, but he is a good player. He leaves a lot to be desired.
Yeah, he
at
has,
the same time.
He has played well at the NFL level.
So if it was $20 million for Greenard, 10 to 12.5 million for Chase Young.
20 every single time I hear 20 then Greenard, I'm just like, I can't do that.
I still don't know if I believe it. I know that's what the projections say, but all the names that you're rattling off, Christian Wilkins, Matabuke, all these guys, Josh Allen has not been tagged yet, I don't believe, by Jacksonville. I just don't see how Jonathan Greenard is a $20 million a year football player.
Because he had 12 and a half sacks, and someone is going to take a swing.
But there's only so many $20 million contracts out there.
Yeah, I agree. But look, that's what the agents are here for, to just drive up the prices of these guys. Really, if you want Greenard back, you got to hope that he's getting a lot of bad news on the open market right now. And it sounds like he's getting at least more than he thought he would.
Yeah, the vibes are not good.
I still feel like that what he is looking for, the Texans are not going to be able to give him. And a short-term Dalton Schultz kind of a deal, where we're talking like 1 year, like 17, 18 or something like that. I don't know if that Texans can really afford that and do all of the things that they want to do when it comes to keeping some of the players that are hitting free agency right now, and also thinking about the Nico Collins extension.
Yeah, and when you look at the Christian Wilkins report, it was kind of just a theory. It was theoretically this could make a lot of sense. It wasn't one of those reports of Christian Wilkins is going to be a Houston Texan. It wasn't even like the Saquon Barkley reports that we've been getting, where that Saquon Barkley is very interested in being a Houston Texan, and he's talking to CJ Stroud, and Stroud is recruiting him here. It was more just speculation that Christian Wilkins could make sense for the Texans. And once again, it's probably, no offense to Jeremy Fowler, probably doesn't realize the Texans have 35 free agents that they have to sign, and they're just like, oh, big name? They have theoretical contract space. Let's say he's going to be a Texan, because the Texans are clickbait right now pretty much across the NFL. Every single big name, could this person be a Texan? It's all about.
That's how the game works.